Preseason testing in 2025 for Formula One hasn't even got underway yet, but I am ready to bring some of my predictions. I know it is way too early for this, but I can't help but get excited for the new season and take a jab at some of the vibes and feelings that I'm feeling for the upcoming 2025 season. So let's get into some of my driver predictions for the top 10 of the 2025 Formula One season, and then we'll get to compare how I feel after preseason and of course at the end of the season as well. So let's get into my way too early 2025 Formula One predictions. Hello everybody, my name is Michael and welcome back to Last to First. For the Drivers' Championship, I'm just going to do my predictions for the top 10. That already is going to be crazy enough to try to guess that this early in the year. Say nothing about the top 20, and it'll be fun enough just talking about who I think is going to be in the top 10. I am feeling pretty decent about my general idea of who's going to be in the top 10 by the end of the season, but the order of that, I'm not so sure if much of anything will come true there, but I'm feeling pretty decent. Most of this is, of course, off of just vibes and what I'm feeling, and also kind of the general trajectories of the teams and the drivers, and just how I'm thinking that they're going to do for the 2025 season. So let's get into who I think is going to be in 10th place, and that is Carlos Sainz. I'm not super optimistic on Williams' 2025 performance. 2026 might be a different story. They certainly have talked about really gearing up towards 2026 and having that be the main focus. So I think that might hinder 2025 a little bit, but I think that Sainz is performing at a very high level, and I know that he's going to get the most out of the car every week, just like Albon generally has as well, but I think Sainz will be a bit better, so I think that'll help his case, and I think just his level of performance is going to help Williams in 2025. Really, as long as the car is good enough to be in the outer reaches of the points, then I think, kind of similar to Alonso last year, Sainz will be picking up these little scraps of points consistently enough to get him inside of the top 10. I'm betting on Sainz coming out on top of the teammate battle between him and Albon, and I think that's why I think he'll be in the top 10 and Albon won't be, because I think Williams is going to be right on the outer reaches of points there, maybe the 6th, 7th fastest team or so, maybe the 8th, who knows, but I think it's going to be super close, so I think he will be able to score some solid points. Carlos Sainz has shown that he is a very adaptable driver. He has great technical knowledge and has a very strong work ethic, so I think all of that is going to help him get up to speed with the Williams very quickly, and it'll allow him to make an impact right away. I am extremely excited to see what Sainz can do in this next phase of his career. You know, he certainly deserves a top team, and it is unfortunate that he's not going to be fighting for wins, podiums, and a championship, but it's what he's been given, and I think he'll make the most of it and put in some great performances that I'm excited to see for the year. Coming in for my 9th place driver, it is going to be Kimi Antonelli. Antonelli is a really tough one to judge, in my opinion, and figure out where he's going to wind up this season. He has a ton of hype behind him in the past year or so. He's had a really promising junior career, aside from a less than spectacular F2 season, but it does seem like the running order of the teams was jumbled a bit in F2, so it was a bit of a weird season, but nonetheless, he did have some good flashes, but generally it wasn't the most outstanding F2 season like we've seen from like Norris, Russell, Leclerc, that type of stuff. He certainly looks to have the goods that he needs to thrive in Formula One, but then we saw in his second flying lap in the F1 car at Italy that he immediately crashes it. To me, that was a really bad thing and a really bad sign. Others will say that he was showing tremendous speed and rawness, and it wasn't that bad of a thing. And that might be true, but generally I view it more negatively, and it makes me concerned for his immediate F1 performance level. I'm worried the pressure might be a bit too much too soon for him, but if he is a superstar like people think, like a Verstappen of the world, then he is going to thrive and he is going to quickly make an impression. I'm still so 50-50 on him that I can't quite make a call as to how well he will do this year, if it's going to be a really standout year or if he's going to have a lot of struggles. But if I'm going to be doing predictions, I think he will be at least good enough and the car will be good enough to get him inside of the top 10, but I think he's going to be on the lower reaches of things. I think Mercedes is going to be 4th fastest, and I think Alpine's actually going to be pretty solid. Then I think another driver like a Gasly might be picking off a few points from Antonelli rather than Russell, and I think that'll be enough to put him in the lower reaches of the top 10. So we'll see. He could have a really standout performance this year and really show why he might be the cream of the crop, or he might have some struggles this year. So only time will tell. My 8th place driver is actually going to be Pierre Gasly. Something tells me that Alpine is going to be a sneaky contender this year with some surprisingly good results. They seem to turn a corner at the end of the year, despite all of the Alpine craziness of them unworks teaming themselves. So just Alpine and Renault things. I think Alpine is going to be mixing it up with Mercedes on occasion and scoring some decent points because, they were showing that towards the end of last year. Gasly had a quietly good year in 2024, and I think he's going to carry that into a new year, especially now that the team is fully his after he grabbed it from Ocon's hands. I don't think Doohan will be a particular challenge for Gasly for as long as Doohan does last, and if Colapinto does come in, I think he will be a better challenge, but I think Gasly will still have the edge. Plus, if Colapinto comes in later in the year, Gasly will already have a points advantage of Antonelli, who doesn't currently have a seat, so of course he will, finish ahead of him. But overall, I think Alpine and Gasly might be one of the surprises of 2025 and team and combo pairing to look out for the year. My 7th placed driver is going to be Liam Lawson. This prediction is, of course, assuming Lawson does decent enough and doesn't get dropped mid-season. We'll see how well he does exactly with all that. But I could see Lawson being better than Perez pretty quickly because he is young, fresh, mentally robust, and he has a driving style that is more similar to Verstappen. But I don't think he's necessarily a superstar that can properly take the fight for Verstappen. I don't see Lawson quite having the 280-point gap that we saw Perez with last year, but I still think he will certainly get decisively beat by Verstappen. I don't necessarily think either that the Red Bull will be the fastest car this year, but I think that could actually aid Lawson's hopes of surviving the year and going forward, because it actually looks a bit better if Verstappen is, say, finishing 3rd, 4th, or 5th, and Lawson is finishing 7th, 8th, or 9th, than it did when Verstappen was winning races while Perez could barely score a point. So the Red Bull being a little less competitive could help him a little bit, since Lawson probably won't lose them at the Constructors' Championship like Perez did. But overall, I get a sense that Lawson will be a decent pair of hands this year, better than Perez, at least in his final season, and better than Albon's and Gasly's stay at Red Bull. But I'm not so sure he's a super long-term option or a good enough option to partner Verstappen in such a tight field. So yeah, only time will tell. I think that's going to be one of the most interesting storylines going throughout 2025 to see what happens at Red Bull with that driver situation. Coming in at 6th, I'm going to go with George Russell. Russell made some good progress in 2024 and showed that he really can be the team leader that Mercedes needs him to be in a post-Hamilton world. I have no reason to think that he won't make another step forward and continue on his momentum of 2024. Previously I've had some concerns about Russell for some time now because he seems to be a little mistake prone, particularly in high pressure scenarios, and has struggled in races with tire wear. However, he did seem to make some progress last year and not make quite as many high pressure mistakes, and really showed to be a good leader of the team. I think there is still some work to be done on his racecraft though, with things like tire wear. So we'll see if he can make another step there next year or this year. Overall though, he did make a good step, and of course he did beat Hamilton over a season on merit, which is no easy task by any means. And while I think his new teammate in the form of Antonelli might be a future superstar, I think it's going to be pretty trial by fire for Antonelli, and I think Russell's going to beat him quite significantly. Another thing going against Russell is that I think Mercedes is probably going to be the 4th fastest team on average, and so I think that's going to be challenging for him to get higher up into the standings. Really, nothing that Mercedes has done in this rule cycle leads me to think that they'll have a breakthrough year in the final year of the regulations. So I think it might be another struggle for them, and hope to have a better 2026. But of course, it is still ground effect cars in 2026. So if they can't understand these cars, I think it's still going to be tough in 2026. But nonetheless, I think Russell will have a good year. He just won't quite have the machinery to be fighting for wins super consistently or fighting for a title. Coming in 5th in the standings, I'm going to go with Oscar Piastri. I really want to see Piastri take another big step like I think that he can do, but some of last year had me a bit concerned. He was super impressive in times like in Italy with some incredibly aggressive passes, and then there was other times where he would go missing and just be way off the pace of Norris like he was in Zandvoort. I think he really needs to up his qualifying game, because even though margins were pretty tight between the two in qualifying, Norris still easily beat him in qualifying overall, and had 8 poles to Piastri's 0 poles. So that's not a particularly good stat for him. At the minimum, I really want to see Piastri get rid of those weekends where he goes missing. Those are not good signs for him. But yeah, overall, I think Lando is going to step up his game a bit more than Piastri does, and I think that'll reflect in my overall ranking of the two drivers. Coming in at 4th, I'm going to go with Lewis Hamilton. I think there's just too many question marks over him at the moment for me to be able to justify having him higher in the championship. Last year brought a lot of concerns over things like his qualifying pace, his consistency, and his adaptability. Also, he's going to be going into a new team, Leclerc's team, and no matter what, it is going to take some time to adjust to a new work environment and a new culture. He'll have a new race engineer, new processes that he'll have to learn, like the steering wheel with engine modes, and he will have Fred Vasseur to support him, but it's going to be a massive challenge for him to get on top of things. Despite this new environment and new team, I think if Hamilton is at his best, if he is the Hamilton of old that we've seen, then I think he most definitely has an opportunity to beat Leclerc even in his first season there, which we hope to see that battle, that's for sure. But I don't know that that'll happen this year, unfortunately, and I think he is going to struggle to adapt a bit. I'm also really unsure how Hamilton is going to fit into that Ferrari culture. It is certainly, a different Ferrari from the past regimes that have been there, but it is still Ferrari. Hamilton is the biggest icon in the sport and lives a lifestyle that sees him travel the world and have multiple interests and businesses and different adventures outside of F1. So is that really going to gel with a team that is typically pretty reserved and one that puts the team above all else? I'm not sure. Time will tell very soon. But yeah, I don't know if it'll be quite the resurgence for Hamilton. Had a bit too many concerns from last year, so I don't know if I can put him any higher than 4th, but I just hope for a good battle between him and Leclerc. In 3rd place, I'm going to go with Max Verstappen. I think his run of titles will finally come to an end, and it will be time for a new champion to be crowned. Now, this ranking doesn't suggest that Verstappen will be turning down the burners by any means, but I think it just reflects where I believe that Red Bull will be in 2025. Thinking back to 2024, Red Bull was actually on the back foot and on the defensive for a good half to 2/3 of the year. It seemed like Ferrari and particularly McLaren just had a slight edge over Red Bull and maybe had higher ceilings with their concepts and were able to go take their cars a bit further. How much Red Bull is willing to change for 2025 will certainly make a big impact on their competitiveness. I think it's unlikely for them to completely change their concept, but there certainly are gains to be made in areas like flexi wings. Something that I think will hurt Verstappen in his championship fight, like in the previous years, is not having a teammate to take points off his rivals. I think there's a good chance that Lawson performs better than Perez, but I still think he will be a bit off, and even being a bit off means not being at the sharp end of the grid with how close this whole grid is in Formula One now. Lastly, what I think is going to really hurt Verstappen is all of the unfinished tension there is at Red Bull between the Christian Horner allegations, the divide of ownership, and the struggle for power after Dietrich Mateschit's death. Yes, Verstappen's beef and Verstappen potentially leaving. I think there's a lot of drama that could be stirred up that will affect the on-track performance again for Red Bull, and I think that's going to cause them to maybe even be the third fastest team this year. So yeah, I'm locking it in now. Verstappen's title heroics come to an end in 2025. Now for the runner-up of the 2025 championship, I am going to go with Lando Norris again. Norris is definitely underappreciated, and maybe I am underappreciating him right now, but I still think he does have a bit to go before he's on a Leclerc or Verstappen level. I think he will have a better 2025 than 2024, but I think there will be another driver who is the full package right now and who will be ready to take the title this year. And if anybody is really able to beat Verstappen this year, then I think it's going to be that other driver rather than Norris, who's really going to take the fight to Verstappen. I'm still a bit too concerned about his starts and his overall ruthlessness to think that an equal or semi-equal machinery across a season, that there won't be another driver or two who could potentially beat him. I think if he does have a proper title fight and beats Piastri again like he did last year, then I think that will be a very successful season for him, even if he doesn't win the title. For him to at least be properly in that title fight and to be beating Piastri, I think will show that he has what it takes. I think there's just a good chance there might be another team and driver pairing that's just going to be slightly better. But yeah, if he is able to fight for the title and beat Piastri again, I think that'll really wake people up more to show just how good he can be, because, you know, I certainly give him a lot of flack as well for things like his starts, but he has a very good Grand Prix driver and above average driver as well. So yeah, people definitely underappreciate him, but I don't think this will be the year for him, unfortunately. I think he'll wind up runner-up in P2. Okay, so for the 2025 Drivers' Championship in Formula One, it is time for Mr. Charles Leclerc to have his moment. I think he is going to be able to take home the title this year, and I think it's finally going to come home to Ferrari after so very long, and I think there's a very good chance that it's going to be Leclerc and not Hamilton who brings home that first title for them in a long time. You know, overall, Ferrari are just on a really positive trajectory since Fred Vasseur took over. It feels like it's really starting to come together for them, and it feels different than past Ferrari false dawns. Leclerc is coming off of a really underappreciated 2024 season where he really put together all the pieces, and it was really one of, if not his best season to date, and I think he looks ready to fight for a title. You know, in the past we've always known his qualifying pace, but he really showed that he can put together a good race, like his one-stop efforts in Italy, I believe it was, in Monza, with that absolutely stunning victory. He shows that he kind of is the full package now. You know, Ferrari did have a bit of a wobble mid-season, and that could be viewed negatively, but I think overall it isn't too bad since they were able to crawl back. And since they were able to crawl back, it seemed like they had a good understanding of the issues and were able to resolve them, and I think that shows a good understanding of the regulations. It just feels like a new time for Ferrari, a new regime, and it just feels like it could really be coming together. Fred Vasseur's been in the team principal role for a little while now. He's been able to start putting together the pieces that he wants to put together to make this team a title winner again. You know, they very nearly did win the Constructors' Championship last year. Had they not had that mid-season wobble, then they could have fought for that. And yeah, it just feels like it's coming together for them, and I don't see why they won't be fighting for the Constructors and the Drivers' Championship this year. They seem to be on a really, really good positive trajectory, so I'm excited to see if they can not falter the year. So we'll see what happens. So those are my way too early 2025 predictions for the Drivers' Championship. Let me know in the comments down below if you think I'm crazy, if it's ridiculous to even do these predictions, which it probably is, but let me know what your predictions are. I would love to hear how everybody is feeling. What are the vibes out there about what's going to happen in this 2025 season? But yes, thank you all for tuning in. If you are interested, give me a follow on social media. I'm on X as Last to First Real. First spelled F1RST. I'm also on Instagram as Last to First. You can find me on all the major podcast platforms as Last to First, and of course on YouTube as well as Last to First. Once again, first spelled F1RST. So thank you all for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you all in the next one as we start gearing up for this 2025 season, and I'll see you in the next one.